YouTubers are no strangers to controversy. Whether it's scamming their fan base or being caught in their own hypocrisy, things like this have become so commonplace that there's an entire genre devoted to covering the drama that ensues from these creators' wrongdoings. But few have come close to the dark and rather sinister saga of Onision. In fact, the scope of the situation is quite unprecedented. With a history that spans many years, and entire wikis that meticulously document everything that's happened, I guess you could say this onion has layers. Come on, I had to make that joke. And it wouldn't be a stretch to say that Onision is the supervillain of YouTube. The man's been at it for many years now as a manipulator, abuser, and groomer. In fact, it's been a very long time since he was actually known for his videos as opposed to his detestable actions. But if you've been around the internet for a little while, you might know him from what is by far his most popular video, I'm a Banana.
I'm a banana, I'm a banana, I'm a banana. Look at me, man!
Truly a masterful piece of cinema. Honestly, it's kind of bizarre to think about just how big he got based on his content, but early YouTube was a much different time. Now, to be quite honest with you, I wasn't entirely sure how to make this video, or if I should make this video at all. After all, what can really be said about Onision that hasn't been said many times before? But judging by the results to the Twitter poll I conducted, you guys seem to want it. With the absolutely huge timeline of Onision-related events, trying to cover it all would be an absolutely gargantuan undertaking for one man. So while I was researching Onision, I narrowed it down to one thing that I found particularly interesting, and that is Sicesca. If you're not familiar with Sicesca, it's widely agreed to be his attempt at starting his own cult and/or religion. Now, Greg would defend himself from accusations of trying to start a cult by saying that it wasn't a cult because he was not the leader. But even if he didn't consider it a cult, he absolutely considered it a religion, as evidenced by posts he would make on his evolutionary psychology forums. Here he asks forum members, "My religion, what is yours?" I personally am a huge fan of Sicesca. It has a website that lines everything out for interested viewers. Are you interested? Well, you got me, Greg. This has piqued my interest. Now, I'm fully aware that this isn't the only video about it, so I'll also try to provide my further analysis on his character based on what we learn, as well as see what lessons we can learn from all of this. Let's dive a little deeper. The origins of this religion started from when Greg was 11 years old. He claimed to have been following it since 1997, and he wrote his ideas down when he was 17. As the Life of Onion wiki states, it may have been that Greg began following his own belief system when he was 11, but did not write it all down and create a name for it until he was 17. It may also be that he was referring to the Sicesca website being created when he was 17. In his own words, Sicesca is an amazing system of facts involving human origins, our future, and general existence. Discover the purpose of all life, and a new reality beyond the teachings of all others. You hear that, guys? Greg is out here spitting facts. One of the great thinkers of our time. We are truly blessed to be living in the same timeline as the man who created I'm a Banana. Records that date back to 2008 show how Greg chose to describe it on his own site. Sicesca takes various beliefs from various religions that seem most logical, and compresses them within one understanding. That understanding is that there are unseen elements at work in the universe. Yet in Sicesca, none of these entities should be relied to change the course of one's future. In Sicesca, reliance on self is essential. So what is this great ideology that will save mankind? Well, thanks to the Wayback Machine, snapshots of the original Sicesca website date back to as early as September 2004. The site opens with quite the hefty promise. The literary documents provided on this site introduce and evaluate an amazing reality which is now finding homes in millions of information-hungry minds all over the earth, though Greg would later alter the statistic of millions to merely thousands. Sections on the site also promise to give you the answers to the meaning of life, the origin of humanity, and our purpose, as well as guidelines of social ethics, because as we all know, Onision is the perfect arbiter of morality. The homepage then goes on to say, Sicesca has become an answer to the vital questions concerning our lives through logical yet amazing facts involving the past and present world. Those capable of understanding Sicesca and the perspectives provided will find the key so many have been searching for. That's right, those capable of understanding it will find the answers, and if you don't find the answers, maybe you just don't understand. I mean, to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Sicesca. But let's get into what exactly Sicescans are supposed to believe. I picked out some key sentences from his website that will hopefully give you a better understanding of the core beliefs. We were all created to nurture our planet and each other, ultimately in mission of optimizing our Earth and inhabitants for the best results on course to an extended survival. We are destined to become the protectors of this Earth, while the Earth mutually protected us. Love, among many things, is a sub-objective in life. Individual desires in the right minds are respected by the source as was designed. However, like the corrupt have proven, love is an idea that has long run its course, only exclusive to few in the common day. It's kind of an incel thing to say, but you know, it is what it is. An idea heavily emphasized in Sicesca is that we all come from the Earth. In Greg's words, unlike the apparent failure of other planets, our Earth created both soul and body to serve it with free will while having our own individual lives to advance ourselves. While being the sons and daughters of the world we live in, good nature towards others manifests also as a contribution to our planet in a small or large portion. And then there's one of my favorites. One of the realities existence offers is to exist. Wow, what a beautiful quote. Perhaps one of the greatest hypocrisies here is how Greg acts like he cares so much about the environment, but later on he turns around and does this.
Taking a chainsaw, chopping down trees, wiping out blackberry bushes and some nettles. But what Greg doesn't tell you is that he did a lot more than just wiping out blackberry bushes, because when he went to court, when the state issued people to go onto his property and see what was going on, what he was doing in this destruction, they found out that it wasn't just blackberry bushes and nettles. He cleared out legitimately everything.
But that's enough about the Earth, because there's also an unseen realm called the Divant, or Devant. Devant sounds cooler, so I'm just gonna go with that. The Devant is defined as the space or realm unseen by human eyes, which all savants and Zodins dwell. Savants are post-human souls which have experienced the honor of being awarded a human body to dwell in, while Zodins are the souls which have never experienced human occupation of given right. Oftentimes sociopaths due to lack in experience of human emotion through a first-person perspective. And on top of all that, Sicesca also has this to say about alien abductions. Alien abductions are real, and they are just more advanced species from other planets studying us. Some people think they may have been abducted, but really they were suffering from sleep paralysis. The reason outside species study us is because they don't understand the energies the Earth creates and shares with its creatures. Although aliens' long lifespans and memories that we could never understand. I'm not entirely sure what he meant to say there since it was just a sentence fragment, but either way, the point remains. Aliens exist. Tom DeLonge is squealing with joy somewhere. The religion also teaches the idea of reincarnation.
In my experience, a lot of people just stick around when they die. Some people move on, and I believe that is possible, that these people are going to different planets with different life forms on them, because this is a big universe, depending on whether or not they behave properly on this planet.
If you've been following the Onision situation for a while, you'd know that there are two groups of people Greg isn't particularly fond of. People who eat meat, and people who believe in God. The latter group is particularly relevant here, with videos such as Religion is Stupid, 10 Things I Hate About Religion, and 10 Things I Hate About Christians, episode 47. Bashing on religion has been a staple of the Onision brand, which makes it particularly interesting that Greg has created his own religion in the form of Sicesca. Now, his history of statements regarding whether or not he actually subscribes to this belief system is pretty spotty and inconsistent. He would list Sicesca as his religion in his biography, and he would try to recruit other people to join as well. Yet, in a video he made in 2014, he had this to say about it.
I started a religion when I was 17 called Sicesca. Thank you for doing that, Dubs. I started a religion when I was 17 called Sicesca, and I followed it for like a year. And then I kind of just gave it up and became agnostic. And the reason I did is just because I felt silly following it. I felt like it was kind of like dumb.
Although he claims that he followed it for a year and then gave it up, evidence seems to suggest otherwise, considering he listed it in his biography in 2008. In 2010, on a forum post, Greg wrote, "Over 5 years ago, I was searching for ideas, trying to figure out what made sense to me. I didn't want to just adopt someone else's beliefs, so I made up my own bullcrap. Mind you, when this was written, I was 17 and very unrealistic. Note, it should be known that I currently have no religion and do not follow this faith, nor do I encourage you to." But just several months later, when he applied for his divorce, he went as far as to apply for his last name to be legally changed to Sicesca. That doesn't seem like something you do if it was just bullcrap you wrote when you were 17. In December 2011, when someone asked him about Sicesca, he said, "When you're a teenager, you tend to make up a bunch of shit. Or you tend to think of a bunch of imaginative things, and you don't necessarily live entirely in this world." Honestly, this whole thing is pretty confusing in general. You'd probably need like a flowchart or something to tell what's going on here. The inner machinations of this man's mind are an enigma. Or at least that's what he wants you to think. If this wasn't Onision we're talking about, I'd probably just interpret all of this as nothing more than a weird teenage fantasy, or maybe an alternate reality game of some sort. But to make matters more confusing, here's a Facebook post he made in 2013 that received mixed reactions, to say the least. "The reason Sicesca was started is because God spoke to me directly and told me to start the religion. Sicescans just get it. We just know things and do things in a more efficient way than others. All other religions, thousands of them I know, are an insult to the true God, that which is only represented accurately in Sicesca. If you wish to worship perfection, well, you could worship me, but that's not what I mean. Then worship God, the God of Sicesca." Many people in the comment section thought it was a joke, or that maybe he just got hacked. As recently as October 2019, Onision claimed in a tweet that Sicesca was a parody of the plot from Final Fantasy VII. I did some digging, and Final Fantasy VII was released in North America on September 7, 1997, meaning Greg would in fact be 11 years old during the first 2 months of its release, which would actually support his statement that he came up with it when he was 11. Take this next part with a grain of salt, but I also found this unsourced image which appears to be Onision responding to criticism, if I had to make an educated guess. In response to the claim of him resuming his Sicesca cult in November 2011, he writes, "You have to be joking. What good would it do me to start a cult? Really? What could I possibly gain from it? Your theory is what's crazy." And in response to the claim that he said he was going to resume Sicesca, he wrote, "What are you talking about? You mean the jokes I made about it? I say again, jokes? Do you not even realize I was making fun of conspiracy theorists just like you?" Interestingly enough, in this image, Greg also claims there was no leader in that belief system, and that it was dedicated to celebrating the Earth, which would contradict him calling himself the god of Sicesca, unless that was a joke or a troll post. Again, I couldn't really find a source for this image other than Tumblr, but personally, I think it's pretty in line with the way Greg writes. As you can see, the line is sometimes blurry between whether or not he's being facetious or serious. As Greg himself mentioned at one point, this whole thing is kinda silly. But when you start to consider all of the cult-like characteristics of Onision's behavior, it starts to cast things like this in a much darker light. Now, before I get into all the different ways Onision is showing cult-like behavior, I want to give a shout out to Tazier, who allowed me to use her points that she laid out in a Google Doc documenting all the different ways Onision is acting like a cult leader. She also made a more in-depth video discussing this, which I will link in the description if you're interested. Some of the traits that make a person more vulnerable to being recruited for a cult include dependency, an intense desire to belong stemming from a lack of self-confidence, gullibility, a tendency to believe what someone says without really thinking about it, and naive idealism, a blind belief that everyone is good. These also happen to be traits more common in younger people, which makes sense because they lack a certain amount of life experience. Also, keep in mind Greg's history of grooming underage girls. Most people who were recruited into a cult were recruited during stressful periods of their lives. One of Greg's victims, Sarah, was going through family issues when Greg and his significant other, Kai, decided to take her in. You could also theorize that the reason Greg made videos on bands like Black Veil Brides and My Chemical Romance was to pander to an audience of troubled emo teens. But as with every cult, you would need some persuasion to get people to join. Greg's massive audience and platform gave him and Kai an avenue to these girls. And with Sicesca, Greg tried to recruit other people to join, even though it ended up failing. Then there's the phase of love bombing. Love bombing is a tactic used by cult leaders in which they show increased affection to the members in order to win their trust and loyalty. Once this is done, certain steps are taken to make sure the recruit is dependent on the cult. Members may be deprived of sleep or food, given exhausting tasks, and/or kept away from their usual support networks. Rigid rules and rituals may be introduced. In this case, Greg came up with multiple disturbing and demeaning punishments for Billy because she smoked weed.
You told me to get a tattoo saying I'm a liar, like a tramp stamp. You told me to shave my head. You told me to dye my hair green, shave off my eyebrows, and get an ugly tan. Like, is that not abusive to you? Do you think that's a fair trade for me telling you that I smoked weed?
In Shiloh's case, she was forced to shave her head, and Greg told her, "I want you to shave your head, cause you're a good bitch." Isolation is another key component of a cult. Sarah left her home to live with Greg and Kai. As a Newsweek article states, "My mom went and signed over my medical power of attorney so that if an emergency happened, they would have rights. Greg joked that they would have the rights to pull the plug. It was for them to take care of me, basically." In the case of Sky, Greg's ex-wife, he writes in an old blog post, "Alright, so it has been a few days since Sky and I hung out with another couple. Judging from the fact that these people were the only ones we knew that had a lifestyle that wasn't drugged out, beard out, also known as drugged out, smoked out, ethically lacking, rude, etc., and we can't even enjoy ourselves around them as much as we do each other, I just really don't see myself and Sky spending time with anyone in the future other than family. I picked the person I want to be with for the rest of my life. I don't see how anyone else would improve that or even keep it on the same level. By spending time with others, I find that my life suffers because I'm forced to face others' problems. And I already spoke of the circle that is their solution or problem mechanism. There are many more examples of Onision's cult-like behavior, but this should give you a good idea of everything. I didn't get into every single detail because then we'd be here for a very, very long time. And the way my upload schedule has been going, it would just take way too long. All of the sources and information are available online, and I'll add links in the description if you want to investigate for yourself. I've seen some people compare this whole Sicesca thing to Heaven's Gate, which, if you're not familiar, is a UFO cult that eventually ended in mass suicide. I've also seen some comparisons to anime, and let me tell you, the Onision anime has been getting pretty interesting lately with the addition of this new character Chris Hansen. I also want to plug my Twitter and Instagram. As I mentioned at the start, the topic of this video was decided by my followers on Twitter. I'm quite interactive on both of these platforms in general, so give them a follow. I also want to thank my friend Rika Sky for helping me get this video done in time. He helped me edit the audio, and he also has a gaming channel if you want to check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Monday morning out the door, Tuesday morning out to shore, Wednesday morning there'll be no more of me.